pop out the chat here. Bear with me, folks. I'm trying to get things set up and make sure that everything's kind of like here.
Yeah, I'll open up the chat.
Okay, I don't see Rumble doing anything yet. Looks like we're live on YouTube. I haven't seen Rumble yet.
Does look like we are live on YouTube.
Okay.
Or at least it's showing an ad. Would you like to Just Dance 25 edition? It's only $30.
I did hit start on the Rumble, and it's acting like we're going, but I'm not seeing the stream running. The stream running? There we go. Okay, yeah. All right, so we're live there now too. Okay, all right, we're live on both sides.
All right.
Okay, let me move things and try to get things lined up because there's always multiple chats here. So we'll see if this works tonight.
Yep.
It ventures in streaming when you do this once every 2 weeks and then you do it on 2 platforms. Not the most fun configuration, I'll be honest with everybody out there in the chat. So.
Oh, I hated it.
It's kind of maddening because nothing kicks off like it's supposed to.
Yeah, once I had it down to a science, then it was just getting it all in place before.
It always takes me a couple minutes every time we go live because I have to pop out all the windows and stuff so I can see the chat, and then I have to make sure it's live on both sides, and then terminating it is the bigger problem because if I don't do that quickly, it'll try to repop the stream. It does it to me on Rumble all the time. So we are back. This is going to be Retro Roots for tonight. I don't know how long this conversation is going to go because I thought this was actually more of a NLG suitable topic, but we're doing it on Retro Roots, so this will be kind of interesting.
Why was it? Okay, I was confused by that because
it's more of a modern gaming problem.
Not necessarily.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, other than the Jackie Chan game on the TurboGrafx 16.
Well, how far back do you want to go?
Go far back as you want to go.
Okay.
I'm curious where you're going to start with this with celebrities and video games, because the furthest back I can recall is probably the 16-bit era.
Yeah.
And even then, it's very loose because you're not really... You've kind of got the name. I mean, okay, so you got Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And then when he lost the title and they didn't want to pay for the license anymore, they changed it back to Punch-Out, which is what it was before. Right?
When he started biting people's ear and getting arrested is when
they pulled him off of Punch-Out before then.
Oh.
This was before he got arrested and put in jail for spousal abuse, and then came out and bit Holyfield's ear off, and then fought Jake Paul and took a dive. Anybody who tells me he didn't take a dive, you're lying to yourself and me.
I think we underestimate. I mean, that's for another day. We underestimate how good Holyfield was.
No, I'm talking about Jake Paul.
Oh, Jake Paul. No, that was
talking about Holyfield. No,
sorry, ear biting and all that stuff. No, Jake Paul. No, Jake Paul definitely. He did that. He didn't take a dive. He just decided. He was how do I put this? He was helping Tyson protect his legacy. I don't know that he took a dive, but I am almost positive those guys talked before.
I think they absolutely talked, and I think it was pretty much like set up from the start on how that outcome was going to go. And I don't think that was protecting Mike's legacy at all. And Mike doesn't even care about his legacy. He said as much.
I think when you say that, I think you do, and it's just an easier way to say that. Because he did such a 180 in his life after going to jail that I think I don't think he was purposely trying to repair his legacy, but I think for being the dominant boxer that he was, being known for his personal demons was probably not where he wanted to go. So he did a good job of rehabbing himself coming out of all of that. And I think this, he also wanted to show that he could still move when he needed to.
Oh, I think he could have got in
Oh,
there and put on a much better show than he put in there and still kept his
yeah.
legacy intact.
Yeah.
He showed as much in his training videos that he can move,
Oh God, yeah.
and then he didn't move when he was in the ring. So something happened. Either way.
Yeah, no
So
doubt.
so part of our topic tonight is, well, there's a couple of points of discussion that I thought might be good talking points on this. One, licensing issues with having celebrities. What happens to the games when you lose the license? How long can you redistribute it when you've actually got their likeness in it? Because voice acting seems to be handled differently than using a person's image, right? So there's that angle of it, the cost of it, and how much it benefits the game, right? And I'm not talking like Indiana Jones where you want it to look like Harrison Ford because that's the character, right? That's the
Right.
exact portrayal of the character. In those cases, it makes total sense, kind of like the Ghostbusters game. And then, shoot, I had a third talking point, but I can't remember right off the top of my head.
Well, we can also talk about those who um, pushed gaming, were big gamers themselves. Um,
Yeah, that's more celebrities playing video games rather than the starring in the video game.
well, we could cover both of those, is what I'm saying. We don't
Okay,
it doesn't, right? Because
yeah,
there's some, like, I don't know if people know this before we get into the celebrities that are in the games, but guys like Robin Williams were not only such huge gamers, and legend has it that he was a big World of Warcraft and Call of Duty guy, but he named his daughter Zelda.
yeah. He did name his daughter Zelda, and he was huge into World of Warcraft. They actually put a
I think
character
he
in the
was in
game
World of Warcraft.
of World of
Yes,
Warcraft to honor him
yes.
after he died.
In fact, World of
Hmm.
Warcraft, if you remember, did that with a few celebrities, where they would put them in the game as various characters.
Arnold was kind of in Double Dragon too, or was that McBain? Maybe that was more McBain. Now I know Contra, when it was originally slated, they kind of wanted to. It was kind of inspired by both Schwarzenegger and Stallone, right? They kind
Right.
of wanted to have them both in it, but that kind of never happened. And if a movie of that had happened, that's where everybody would have really have wanted it to go, because that seemed to be how they modeled them, right? In kind of the rough way that they were able to model things in an 8-bit era, right? It's not like Mike Tyson's Punch Out, that when you got to Mike, it kind of clearly looked like an 8-bit version of Mike, you know?
Well, so if you want to go back, a little way, there were some, Bruce Lee was in even old. There was a video game called Bruce Lee, which now is just called Lee because they can't use his name anymore. But that was even back on old computer systems like Commodore 64. Which you played that one, right?
I don't think I played that one actually.
It's in Antstream. Just let
Well, yeah, I guess I
and
could.
and
But
it even spawned a sequel. And it as well as it could have looked like him with the pants and the kind of the way he kicked. And then, like, Bruce Lee's been in several games, including the one based on the movie, which came out for the Genesis. And I had one for the Atari Jaguar, which was called Quest of the Dragon, and then I have one up on the shelf for the Xbox. I can't remember which one that is. And actually, Quest of the Dragon might be Xbox, but the one for the Jaguar was also the Bruce Lee movie story, because it followed the movie. So there were games, beyond that. Michael Jackson, Michael Jackson was in an arcade game and a Genesis game, and they
was
made
it
him look
Moonwalker?
really close.
Wasn't it?
Moonwalk.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think the very first one was Fonz.
Which one?
Fonz. Literally
Ooh.
named after Fonzie from Happy Days.
Hmm.
It was a Sega
Let's,
game in the arcade that used the likeness of Fonzie on it. It was a sprite scaling game.
and that was why am I blanking on his real name? Holy cow.
Henry Winkler.
Henry Winkler.
That's who you're thinking
Oh
of.
my god. I don't know why
Yeah, it was 1976.
Moonwalker was a Master System game too. That's true.
Yeah, it was originally called Road Race. And then later they released motorbiking variants on it.
What's up, Sai?
And then Fonz came out. Okay. In North America, November of 1976 was Fonz.
Wow.
It used his likeness on the side of the cabinet. And you could hardly tell it was him in the game. But if you look at the side of the cabinet, you can absolutely tell that he's in there on it. So that's pretty much like the earliest one that I'm aware of, unless you know something earlier.
I can't think of anything earlier than that. I mean, using celebrities wasn't a big. Well, there you go. Colonel Custer. Oh my god.
Well, I mean, I think wasn't there like a Custard's Revenge on Atari?
That's what the game he's talking about.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But that would have been past 1977, so Fawn still beats that. So there. And then, how loose do we want to do this? Do you want to talk like, well, okay, Leatherface and Texas Chainsaw Massacre for Atari, but that's not really using a likeness. Yeah. That's more or less a character, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think if you want to talk, there are a ton of games, and I know a lot of them are modern games because that's what they're doing nowadays.
Hey, by the way, in that case,
but there are a lot of games. The whole point, the divergence of games and movies, or kind of the convergence of games and movies, really has taken off in the last few generations. And celebrities in games have become a huge thing. Yeah, true. Macaulay Culkin there. I mean, there were Home Alone games, and they did model the character after him. Was he in Chess Master? Page Master. I was going to say, I know there was a celebrity voice in Chess Master, but you went mute, Nick.
Is that any better?
There you go. You're back.
Okay. I'm not sure what's happening with this cable or this microphone. Something weird's going on, and I'm not sure what it is. But yeah, he corrected himself. He initially said Chess Master, and he came back and said Page Master. I kind of knew what he was talking about because I was kind of picturing the box art of it on the Genesis already when he said it.
That's funny. But yeah, I mean, a lot of them are newer games.
Oh shoot! I don't have. Hold on, I gotta get. I forgot to get Peter on this one, and now he's invisible. Hold on, I'm working on it. I promise. Yeah, may as well be. I feel like it is. You're just gonna cover up. You're just gonna cover up whatever chat's coming up. It's fine. Woo! Okay. So yeah, I don't have you completely lined up with where you need to be, but it's okay. We'll make it work. It'll be okay. There we go. So yeah, if you look at this, this is the actual gameplay of the game. This was one of their first sprite scaling games where everything seemed to kind of scale and move forward on the things. Like occasionally you'll see like bushes and stuff, and they seem to get larger, and you'll notice some of the character sprites get bigger kind of as they come by and come towards the tail end of the game. Yeah, kind of. I mean, he's looking at it through the actual CRT, so I'm sure it's even more distorted than it would be if you were sitting there playing it, right? Yeah. Yeah, let me flip back over here and I'll see if I can find an image of the things so you guys can actually see the cabinet. But that's pretty much the earliest one that I can think of off the top of my head.
Showed. I got that reference.
He's floating above our heads in a million pieces.
I got that reference.
Peter, no! How dare you, Nick? Yeah, here we go.
No. I think
But you can see right here on the side, they decided to like re-tag it. So there's the game with like the steering wheel and the bike and everything like that. Of course, it's the 70s. You were allowed to do that. It wasn't considered terrible at the time. We can't show that now. YouTube might demonetize me.
That's history. You can't demonetize based on history, right?
Yes, you can. I'm certain you can.
Oh yeah. So, but again, we all know the kind of the big game of the last, I'd say, well, almost, I guess, 4 or 5 years that had, arguably one of the biggest movie stars in it, known to man, and that was Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk,
right?
Which also, made for one of the probably the most memorable. Was it? Maybe it wasn't that memorable since I don't remember which show it was. It wasn't the game. It was the Game Awards, wasn't it? That he came out to.
Oh yeah, it might have been the Video Game Awards. Yeah, he called everybody breathtaking. Is that the?
No, wasn't it the Xbox show?
Was it?
I thought it was. They had the marketing rights for.
I am looking.
All I can remember is that game was a mess everywhere it launched for like months. My understanding is it's in a pretty good shape now, but initially it was really bad.
All right. He did an interview for 2023 show.
But that game came out in 2020 because they were talking about the 4-year anniversary of it.
That was today. It was for the.
Peter, is it so just me or did Mike go all sorts of wonky?
It was the Xbox E3 show,
okay.
2019. So he needs to do a John Wick game. That would be slick.
Honestly, I think that would be. There's been a couple of John Wick games, and I think they got to use his likeness because it's tied to the IP.
Yeah.
But I don't think they've done anything.
Oh yeah, John Wick
really
the game
next gen with it.
Yeah, came out last year, and then there was a pinball machine too.
Yes, and his likeness is on the pinball machine.
Yeah.
That kind of licensing I feel like is a little bit easier because it's all on like, and maybe it is and maybe it isn't, because I know you have to work out the licensing deal and the likenessing deal with the celebrity, and then they get like a cut of it, because I know a lot of those pinball machines, the Elvira one I think had like a really short run. There's a 007 James Bond one with Sean Connery's likeness on it. What's up, Mario? Good to see you, man.
Mario! So it looks like...
I wasn't sure if we were going pinball or if we were sticking to like actual video games.
No.
Because
I
I was
think it's
thinking
stick with video
because the
games.
reason the whole thing popped up in my head is I think it was Conor McGregor. They were going to pull him out of the next Hitman game because he got accused of like domestic violence, right?
Right.
So he was set to be in that. He was set to be in that game, and now they're having to spend months and months reworking it because they're pulling him because they don't want to be associated with him having been accused of domestic violence. And this was before anything had been proven, right? So they just as soon as the allegations came out, they were just like, okay, we're done, right?
Right. And that's, you know,
And so that's the other problem, right? If you're in the middle of development and you're like 8 years into your development cycle or 5 years in, right? And you're set to go gold or you've started to go gold and then this happens, now you have to pull that back, rework. Hopefully you've got another model or stand-in for this particular character that you were going to use before you get the license and rights to be able to use this person.
right.
And rework that into every instance in the game that they're in and hope you catch everything.
Well, another thing that, you know, there are celebrities whose likenesses were used in the game for them, but there are also the same amount of celebrities that use their likeness for other characters in the game that look like them.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I mean, that's the Johnny Silverhands Keanu Reeves thing, but it's still
that's
him,
true. Yeah, that's actually
right?
true. And then, you know, Norman Reedus and Mads Mikkelsen from Death Stranding.
Oh, yeah.
Rami Malek was in Until Dawn. Um, I mean, there's a ton of those type of
Yeah.
of characters. I think Liam Neeson was like in Fallout 3.
Was he?
Yeah, I think he was like a doctor or something like that.
I don't recall that, but there's
Samuel
a lot
L.
of stuff in
Jackson
Fallout 3
was
I just
in.
didn't bother to do.
Yeah, Samuel L. Jackson was in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Yeah, Snoop Dogg's been in Call of Duty.
Snoop Dogg's been in Call of Duty. Well, and that's another thing is all the Call of Duty and Fortnite characters that are made after real people. Like there was a whole thing. Peter, you remember it when Eminem was.
That's right. He did the voice of your dad. It wasn't really his likeness though. It was his voice that they used.
Which one for?
Liam.
They tried. I just found it. Liam Neeson plays James, a scientist and doctor who, after spending 19 years in an underground vault with his child, leaves in search of a piece of technology needed to rebuild civilization. It looks like they tried to make it look like him and failed.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing is depending on the technology at the time, like you were showing with Fonz, and we were talking about with other characters, the more you got, the better the technology got, the better the game got at doing that, right?
Well, I don't think they were going to rework anything for the bike. I think they intended to leave that a nondescript person. I just think they thought the game would make more money with his likeness on the side, and that's how they licensed it, right?
Makes sense.
It was almost like promotional material in that case, because you had, hey, it's Fonzie, right? The game's called Fonz now. We can use this character. Right. And Henry Winkler comes along with that because he's the Fonz, right? So it was that kind of like tie-in, right? Almost like a celebrity commercial type thing, only just slapped on the side of the cabinet. I imagine that ran for a while, and then they decided not to continue to use that license. And then it probably went back to being like Roadmaster or whatever it was called before, right?
Right. Now, you know, another very famous set of games that used the person were the two 50 Cent games. One of them was horrible. One of them was bad. The other one was good.
But I don't know if that would even be in print or on sale anymore. I think that's just a period piece of whenever it was. So if you managed to have a physical copy of it, sure. I mean, that would be like, there was like a Def Jam combat game too that had, I want to say like Ice-T or LL Cool J or a couple people in it.
Yep. Well,
and that's the same way. I don't think that ever got relicensed.
no, you have to have.
So now my mic is really loud, apparently, according to Born.
Oh,
I'll turn myself down a little bit. I just turned my gain down a little bit. So hopefully that'll help.
yeah. No, you have to have the physicals, but I believe that Bulletproof, which was the Xbox PS2 game, I think it's backward compatible, so you could play it on Series X and Xbox Ones.
Yeah.
One of those two games is.
Well, I mean,
backwards
making
compatible.
them backwards compatible is fine. I'm talking about being able to, like, if you ever wanted to, like, remaster that game, you would have to get that license all over again.
You probably would, and
I mean, it's
you
kind of
probably
like DuckTales or Darkwing Duck or all those. If you wanted to go through and do an HD remaster of those like they did with the DuckTales one, right? They had to get the
right.
license, then they could release it, and then they were going to drop the license at one point, and then it got pulled from all the stores digitally because they didn't have the license for everything anymore, right? So they couldn't sell copies for it. They ended
Right.
up re-upping it at some point because it showed up in the store again.
Well, and I think that's why you saw all the Rock Band and Guitar Hero games kind of never being not only remastered, but Peter, they tried to add that stuff to Fortnite. You have the guitar? Have you seen any new songs come into Fortnite?
Well, they had the Metallica stuff, right? That might have been the last things, but yeah, the rest for I don't know what songs they added. Have
I
not
haven't
been
seen.
too active in the.
Yeah, I haven't seen much. And weren't the Rock Band pieces like the DLCs all compatible with that? Supposed to be?
I don't know. I don't think that
I
is
never
live
paid
right
much
now.
attention to Guitar Hero, so I can't even help contribute with this one, Peter. It's all you, man.
Well, it's just Rock Band, right? It's another Guitar Hero. Guitar Hero is Activision.
That's right.
Right.
Guitar Hero was
It's Rock Band.
one
Yeah.
line of it, and Rock Band was the other. Yeah. And I believe there was a Wu-Tang fighting game.
But I'd rather play Rock Band than playing Rock Band within Fortnite because it's not as
Christopher Walken and
great.
Ripper.
Oh yeah. Well, and Danny Trejo's done a couple of games. He was in Call of Duty, but he was also in Far Cry 6, right, Peter?
He was in Far Cry 6. That's right.
Yeah.
And it was as Danny Trejo.
Yes.
Yeah. Tim Curry was in one of the Command & Conquer games.
Yes, he was.
In space.
Oh shit! Which one was he in? Hold on, now I gotta look it up because you're right. He was absolutely.
Oh yeah.
He had the hat on and everything. He was the. Here it is. Oh my goodness! His premier Cherdenko. Red Alert.
Who was
3.
also in New Vegas? Was Tim Curry in there?
I don't know if Tim Curry was in there, but it was Red Alert 3 he was in.
Yeah.
All right, hang on. So now I'm going to look at Tim Curry. What was the other one?
Fallout New Vegas, I think
Fallout?
I mentioned. I don't know if that was him or somebody else because we've mentioned a lot of celebrity names now. And Mario said they keep adding new songs to Festival.
No, it does not appear Tim Curry is in there.
So then I started blasting. Oh, Danny Trejo.
Danny
That's what I was talking
Trejo.
about. Danny Trejo. Okay. Yeah, I figured we got that wrong, Nick, because we had mentioned a couple people in rapid succession, and then you commented, and I knew we were going to get the wrong one. That's on us.
Was he in New Vegas?
According to Nick.
I'm looking. I don't. Oh, he was Raoul the Ghoul. Okay. So it was just a voiceover. But still, Gary Coleman was in Postal.
Look at Big Block. Peter and Mike, is this the original Next Level Geekstorian?
Yeah.
Um,
I know they're trying to take over my show, Big Block. I see how it is now. Tuesday night's not enough for him anymore. No, gotta come on over here.
Nick invited Peter. Just throwing that out there.
Sticking to my story. It's my show.
I think
Or was.
so. Cat Williams was in Grand Theft Auto 4.
Oh yeah. Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty, I feel like gets them in all the time. Because Kevin Spacey was in one of the Call of Duty games in the campaign, I think.
As somebody else, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was also that stuff
Well,
also
they were using
happened.
his face, so they're
Right.
using
Yeah.
his likeness to play a character. It's still a role, right? But you're
Absolutely.
still at some point at the end of the day, right? You have to get the licensing rights to be able to continuously use that, right? Like
Yes.
printing movies and stuff like that. They were in a
Yes,
movie
like-
in a role. How does that work? Does that work the same way in the video game industry? Or do you just get to use their likeness kind of like, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out? He didn't have any lines, but when they changed it from Punch-Out, they had Mr. Dream as the main antagonist, I guess, that you fight at the end of it, if there really is an antagonist in that game. They changed that to Mike Tyson because when they were building the game, they were really big fans of him and his career. So they went in and got the licensing rights to be able to use his likeness on the box and to put his likeness in the game and then use him as the end character. Now, there's no actual tangible difference between him and Mr. Dream mechanically in the game, but the likeness is still there. You see what I'm saying? And
Yes.
I mean, that's interesting because remember the NCAA game way back when they used the player's likeness and without compensating the actual players, and
right.
and then it went offline for a long time.
And I think that's a different licensing agreement because it has to do with the NCAA and college rules versus professional athlete rules, and even that is still controlled, I think, by like NBA or NFL or NHL or whatever.
The
organization you're
NFLPA.
part of, right? Like
Correct.
they can have you do ads for Nike, and you might get a small cut of it, but they get a large cut of it because it's their organization, right? It's their label. So there's all sorts of weird agreements that come into those too.
Well, that too. But the players were not happy that they were using their likeness and stuff. Same thing with tattoos and stuff. Remember that, or even tattoos and in general, where the tattoo artist says like, "Hey, those are copyrights," and you cannot just use them on the character themselves. I kind of deviate a little.
Didn't Rockstar do? Right? Didn't Rockstar do that with? Wasn't that a Grand Theft Auto thing?
Maybe that was one game, but probably I don't know. No, I think it might be an NBA game, maybe.
Really?
NBA game, I think.
NBA Jam, which somebody mentioned earlier, had a ton of different celebrities in it. A lot of them were politicals, like Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
etc. You had tons of those that popped up in there, and you had because it was all under the Midway umbrella. You'd have like Scorpion and Sub-Zero and Raiden and all those pop in, but that's not it.
Right.
It's a guest appearance. It's not necessarily kind of completely on brand with what we're talking about, but they did have a bunch of different people's likenesses that they had in there.
So what would happen? What happens when we're talking about having to get likenesses and stuff? Who then gives permission when it's an actor that's no longer alive? So one of the ones that I'm thinking of is it took me a minute. My mind went to Keith David, but Keith David's still alive. Lance Reddick was in Quantum Break. And if they ever wanted to remaster that game for whatever reason, I mean, obviously Sean Ashmore and who was the bad guy in that?
I mean, Horizon Zero Dawn, he was in there.
He was in that too.
Yeah.
So what happens in those? And like Quantum Break looked exactly like his like that was on par, I think, with games like Detroit Next Human and Indiana Jones, where the likenesses were so precise that it looked like them. What do you do in that case?
where I think this goes is similar in vein to where it happened with Michael Jackson, right? Because you had a couple of games that had him in it. Um, he had a lot of unaccredited music in Sonic 3, which I think I can't remember if they're still able to even use that if they wanted to remaster that. Moonwalker, which I don't think they're allowed to remaster or reprint that because
Space
the
Channel
state won't
5.
allow it. They had a caricature of him in his iconic jacket for Thriller and Plants vs. Zombies. And when he
Yep.
passed, his estate told them to nix that. So they had to change that to a character called Disco Stew.
Yep.
They
And
changed it to Disco Zombie because it used to be a
and
Thriller zombie and then it turned into a Disco Zombie.
right. And then uh they say Space Channel 5.
Right. Which I don't know if they can do anything with that anymore either because all that music is done by him. So all
And
the
what
ownership of that goes
yeah.
to the estate if there is one,
Well,
right?
not just that. Think about the game the Michael Jackson Experience, which was out on Wii and actually Xbox 360 with Kinect, where you
Mm.
danced with Michael Jackson. Which now that my youngest is in his Michael Jackson phase, my wife actually found a copy of that for the 360.
Yeah,
It's one of his
Tony Hawk's
Hanukkah
another
gifts.
one.
Yeah, and Tony Hawk is interesting because they've just remastered that stuff, and he's involved in every
Yeah,
game.
well, I mean, he's still around, and he was a big part of those, and that kind of helped. And I think I don't think you'd ever have a problem with him on those in particular. Maybe some of
No,
the other skaters that were in there that were pro skaters at the time, because you got
yes,
to remember they had a bunch of other pro skaters in there, not just Tony Hawk. It had his name on it, but there were tons of pro skaters that were listed in there around that time. Um, but I think he likes that series in particular, not only because it makes him probably a crap ton of money, but it also promotes skating as a hobby and as a sport, right? Which it really did seem like it kind of got a boost in interest again when those games came out, right?
right. Some of these older games are not really going to get remasters, so you're not going to get a remaster of Sonic 3. But I was just thinking about that, and the what happens when you're not credited? He's not Jackson is not credited, as
He's
we
not
just said. He's not credited for it. He didn't want to be credited in it because he just wanted to do the game.
right.
I don't know that because
I
I
don't know
mean,
that that
really,
falls under the estate law. I think
I
you're
don't think
right.
that's all. I'm not sure that it does. Um, I'm taking a look at Moby Games because I want to see who is credited for the
I'm gonna look at this
soundtrack.
boxing game that Michael Jackson was apparently in. And
I don't
I
think it was
never
Ready to
heard of such a
Rumble.
thing.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm looking up games he was in. Um,
Ready to Rumble 2.
he was in Ready to Rumble too. Yes, he was. He was an unlockable. That's right. That's right. He was an
That's
unlockable.
kind of awesome.
I have Ready to Rumble too. I can't believe I forgot that.
Yeah, showed he's it's kind of a not so well kept secret now that the Sonic 3 music was composed by him. At least a lot of it.
Yeah.
Um, he
At
was
the
he was
time,
fans of Sonic and he wanted to kind of do some work on
he's a
one of the
big
video
Sega fan.
games, but he didn't really want to be credited for it. That's why his name's not really anywhere on it.
Yeah,
And matter of fact,
and
the sneakers that Sonic wears are inspired by
yep.
the Bad album, Michael Jackson's
Yeah.
Bad album.
Unfortunately, um, when they were making Sonic 3, was in the middle of his child sexual abuse allegations, and I think that had a piece of that kind of a reason he wanted to stay uncredited so he didn't damage the game. Um, the the music composers are listed as Brad Buxer, Bobby Brooks, Daryl Ross, Jeff Grace, Doug Grisby III, and then they list him, but they list him as uncredited.
Right.
So now his music is also I mean, I know that's not his likeness, but his music has been in a few things. His actual music. So like, believe it or not, Vice City, Billie Jean was on one of the radio stations in Vice City. So uh, the CD set, and it's one of the songs on the CD set.
Okay.
So, and obviously he's been in, Guitar Hero and Dance Dance Revolution. So he's had some of his music in there too. Um, and in fact, I just looked. Beat It was in Alvin and the Chipmunks Chipwrecked in 2011. So they've been, you know, as late as that, they've been licensing his music.
Yeah, and you can still get a license for a lot of the music and stuff for a lot of this. You just have to go through different avenues to do it. And I
Right.
think part of the reason I thought about this, other than the fact of like different controversies and them having to pull things out, which you could kind of accredit Mike Tyson being one of them, or actually, I think in that case, it just the licensing deal ran out and they opted to not renew it at that time, and so it just sort of naturally dropped. And then when they reprinted the game or bring it out in any other form, like if you're to play that on the Switch Online service, it's just called Punch Out. It's not Mike Tyson's Punch Out. So you get the version with Mr. Dream, right? The only way to get the Mike Tyson one is to either get the physical cart or emulate it. That's the only way to get that particular version anymore.
Right.
Mechanically, design wise, everything all the way up to Mike is identical, right? So the only difference in the game is Mike himself not being on the title screen or in the very end of the game, right? But in other games, it's different and more impactful, right? Like if you were
Right.
to, all of a sudden you couldn't use the likeness of Keanu Reeves, you'd have to go back and remaster most of Cyberpunk. He's probably got several hours of content in
Oh God, yeah.
Cyberpunk
Yeah.
Yeah.
that you would have to redo, right?
I don't see them I don't see them having to remake that though. So
I don't either, and I don't think Keanu would care in his case.
no, I think he
But
likes
there
it.
would be other people that would, right?
It depends on what they get paid for it too. I mean, they obviously
Yeah.
get paid royalties for all that. And Big Block and Nick, the Silver Flame Dragon, are both correct. Pele. So the Atari 2600 Pele game was like the Fonz, like your Fonz game.
Right.
He was on the cover, but if
Yes.
you ever saw the soccer game, it was basically a little.
There
It was
were a
like,
lot of sports games like that. So a bunch of them hit Nintendo as well.
yep,
That had like license had key people on it. It was kind of like John Madden football when it first came out. You didn't really see John Madden in them a lot, but it had his name associated with it. Later on, he was in there doing like voice work and commentary and physically in the game as a commentator and
right.
coach and all that, but not initially.
No, initially he was actually, because I know the story of this. I said
What's up, Batman?
I'd actually
And Shaq Fu is
there was
another one of
a
those, but they were able to actually remaster that game not that long ago. Actually,
when the Xbox 360 was coming out and the new Madden game and all that stuff. Madden did Madden did an yeah
that might sell
Madden
just so people could beat the living crap out of Jake Paul.
Madden did a kind of like a symposium at E3 about his involvement in the game. The original Madden game for the Genesis was more than just
Actually,
his name on the
Madden
box.
came out before the Genesis.
Oh, it was on
There were some 8-bit
PC.
versions and PC versions
There's a
as
PC
well.
version.
Yep.
But the Madden his role in the original games was more than just the endorsement.
Well, he helped.
He helped
with
design
a lot of the plays that came in there and tried to help it look more realistic, and because he wanted the game to feel more like a football simulation.
Exactly. So it was a, yeah, the Amiga had it.
Jake Paul's Punch Out. All your opponents are at least twice your age. So Little
No,
Mac's been replaced by Jake Paul. You get enough star hits and you could just throw money and then they take a dive.
that's funny. So Peter, I know about the Atari kind of games that did that kind of stuff, but you grew up on the Commodore 64. Were there games that had that, even if they weren't in the game, they were on the manual, on the box?
Well, Cobra with Sylvester Stallone.
Oh,
They had games based off of that. I didn't even realize that. I mean, that brings up like the Rambo series of games because there was a Rambo game on the
Yeah,
NES,
that too.
right?
and on the Genesis, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
The
Cobra.
Genesis had like Rambo 3. There was one just titled Rambo that was on the NES. I don't know what other formats it was on. It probably wasn't just on the NES.
Now there's a PC Rambo game.
So yeah, there were those, and then, well, okay, Akari Warriors started out as a licensed game that
Correct.
was going to use those likenesses, and then they didn't get it. But they wanted to use some of those actors as well, but couldn't get it. I'm trying to think of other 8-bit games that had licensed characters.
Well, I mean, 8-bit game. LJN, famous for that.
Well, okay. I guess, are you thinking more caricatures? Or are you thinking like action or trying to do the actual aspect? Because like with John Madden football, it's clearly got John Madden on the cover. They're clearly trying to make a depiction of John Madden in the game, right? I mean, if you're talking Beetlejuice, you could argue Michael Keaton for like the LGN game that was on the NES. But does that count because it's more the character in full makeup, or does it count as the actual actor? Because in that case, I would think you would just have to get the character's likeness because it doesn't necessarily, in full makeup, look like Michael Keaton.
Right.
Now,
Well,
if
like
you're
I'm
talking the
looking at
Sunsoft Batman game for the Genesis, that looks a hell of a lot like Michael Keaton.
yes, and all the the cutscenes have the actual
Correct.
right. And in fact, if you want to take it even farther, Batman Returns for the Genesis and even more so for the Sega CD, had Michael Keaton and Danny DeVito's likenesses and stuff like that. But I'm looking at the game that Peter just brought up, Rambo, and yeah, not only is he on the cover, and this was Amstrad, CPC, Commodore, and ZX Spectrum. So I want to check this out.
Oh no,
But
on Rambo, he was definitely on the cover.
Yeah, but he looks like the character in the game kind of does look like what he would look like if you were throwing him into a.
Scrambles, I love how Contra ripped off Alien, but it isn't visually licensed. Yeah, they just did a nondescript scorpion spider looking thing that happened to come out of an egg.
Now later on, it looks like there's a 2014 Rambo game, and they definitely are using his face.
Yes, that game was apparently terrible. I think it was like QTE the game. I remember that one being hyped up at some point, and I thought it looked really cool because they had licensed his image again. And I think they were going to do it off the latest Rambo movie that was out at the time. And they were trying to make a big deal of it, but the gameplay just didn't come off as anything anybody wanted. I seem to remember that one to some extent because I remember looking at it and going, man, this looks like this could be fun. And then I heard how it played and I went, oh, that really bums me out.
Oh, see, even in so interesting, the Rambo 3 Genesis game, even in the cutscenes, has Stallone's likeness, and in the gameplay looks like Stallone. So they did a pretty good job of. They did a pretty good job with that one.
Yeah, once you start to hit 16-bit, the likenesses really do start to look about as close as you can get with a still to the actual personage, right?
Well, but even in game. So here, I'm gonna put this in the chat. I don't know if you could see that in the video chat.
Let me go over to it. Hold on. I can probably get there. Yeah, I see it, but this looks. Is this from an 8-bit game? Well,
No.
Rainbow 3 is a different story. That's a 16-bit game.
No, I know.
That's what this is. This is Rainbow 3.
Correct, and that's the game I was talking about.
Okay.
But if you look at even the in-game screens, and like, oh, here I'll go back to the Rambo 1.
What do you mean Mike killed the stream? I thought we were still live. I thought so. I don't show that we're not live. Well, hold on. I'm gonna pull up YouTube. Okay, no, Scrambles came back and said we're live. Okay, all right. Wait, Scrambles, you're giving me a heart attack, my man. Quit it. But yeah, if you're looking at these are all from Rainbow 3, and yeah, these look really good. These scenes in particular, when you're like fighting the helicopter or the tank, those things are a pain in the butt, by the way. Scrambles just over here trying to give me a heart attack anytime he can. He knows I struggle with dual streaming. Dang it, Scrambles! Thank you for
Thanks,
learning,
Batman.
So yeah, I guess part of the question is and I haven't really looked this up. I wonder how long the licensing and everything like that on some of these products lasts, right? Because it's not like you're seeing anybody. Not that necessarily Rainbow 3 is like the game people want to see remastered, right? But some of these games were popular enough or had enough of a cult following, like Shaq Fu, that they did kind of revisit those. So I would imagine they would have to go back through and either get the rights to the game and the licenses for any likenesses used in the game before they could do those games again. Well, like the NCAA games, those were like once a year and then they're done, right? Yeah. So those you're not really worried about because you're doing like next year's roster. That's how those games function.
But I guess in a game like that's like a movie game, do you have to go after the actors? Do you have to go out to get the licensing for the actor, or do you just go and get the licensing from the studio?
I don't know. I would imagine if the studio keeps persistent rights to that character's likeness,
I'd have to think so.
In your portrayal of that, then you would have to just get that license for that particular property.
I mean,
I wonder if it's a contract, and if it's a binding contract between the actor and the game studio when it comes to games where they're portraying a role like, say, Johnny Silverhand or Kevin Spacey's role in Call of Duty.
Yeah.
And those kinds of things,
yeah.
right? Because it's technically
I mean, Harrison Ford's in Indiana Jones. I mean, it's a very recent one, you know. Does he have to give permission? Is it just Lucasfilm?
I think that's through Lucas. That's through Lucasfilm, because Lucasfilm, what they did with Indiana Jones.
The answer to the question then. To
because, well, the other thing too is what they did interesting with Indiana Jones is Indiana Jones has had a likeness that doesn't necessarily, they don't credit Harrison Ford. It looks like Indiana Jones. And see, that's kind of an interesting. That was a good one to bring up,
Yeah,
Peter,
because he
because
doesn't play himself. Is
he
what you're
doesn't play
saying.
himself, and the voiceover is Troy Baker, which sounds like Harrison Ford. You could make the argument.
Hmm.
I'm not
Honestly,
sure
it's
they had.
close enough that it's not jarring. All the
No,
voices
it's
that I heard
not.
on that are so close
Yeah.
to
He
the
does.
original portrayals that
Troy Baker is
it doesn't throw me off too much hearing them.
no. Troy Baker is one of the best voiceover game actors in the business, bar none. Um, but it's not Harrison Ford, and yeah, he kind of looks a little like Harrison Ford. But Indiana Jones is a character. They've used that for decades.
Yeah, no, the
Since
character looks like Harrison Ford when he was younger. Like,
But when you see him, you don't think like, "Oh, that's Harrison Ford." No, you think it's
you
Indiana
think it's
Jones.
Indiana
I
Jones, and I
think
think you could.
both technically because they're almost inseparable to me because Harrison Ford's always played that role.
That's fair. That's
So I've
fair.
never really seen anybody else
Yeah.
play that role unless you're looking at like young Indiana Jones, and that was Indiana Jones when he was a kid, right?
Right. And River Phoenix for the short time he played in
That
the
would be like what young Indiana
Young
Jones.
Indiana Jones
Yeah, yeah,
adventure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, but that would be an interest. So, like with Cobra, with Rambo, who would you go after to get those rights? I don't know that you have to get them from Stallone. I think you just have to get them from the movie studio.
Yeah,
But but
unless he owned those particular IPs, like
all right,
if you were gonna do like okay, before he sold it, if you were going to do a Rocky game, you would have to go to Stallone because he owned the IP Rocky at that point. He sold it at some point, but he had held on to that for a long, long time. I think like after Rocky 5 he sold it and
yeah.
then they started doing like the Creed movies.
And he didn't own it, and he actually didn't own it at first either. He didn't
Rocky?
get
Yeah, he did.
no,
He
no, he
wrote
did
it.
not at first. He didn't, but he didn't own the movies. He had he had an interview. Who was he interviewing with? He talked about because he talked about one of the reasons that he really didn't want to do Rocky anymore and almost didn't do two, because he wrote the screenplay, but uh, he didn't own the rights to the movies. United Artists, whoever was at United Artists at the time, actually owned the movie and paid him pittance for it, like
Yeah.
compared to what it is today.
Well, he was
So
big on being able to keep the intellectual property of it. That was
yes,
one of his big things, and that's why he didn't get as much money for it because he didn't sell it to them outright. So he didn't get as much for the role, but he got to keep the actual property itself. And Scramble says Indiana Jones is just Han Solo in a cowboy hat. Changed my mind. I would argue Han Solo is just Indiana Jones sans cowboy hat.
right. Irwin Winkler. Yep, Irwin Winkler had the rights to the Rocky films. He wrote them, and in fact, he directed two of them. Two of them. He wrote all five Rockies and directed three of them. But Irwin Winkler, who produced them, he owned the movies and wouldn't give him any ownership rights into them.
There was showed, and I meant to mention that one. Celebrity Deathmatch was another one of those, and that I want to say was an MTV thing, because I think that was licensed by MTV, and they went out and got the likenesses to be able to do everybody in like claymation and all that stuff. So they did have the rough likenesses done in claymation because that was a God, didn't that run for a couple seasons? I want to say.
Which one? Celebrity Deathmatch? Oh yeah. MTV.
That was back at their height of their popularity where they were starting to pump out movies too. You had stuff like Joe's Apartment and all that stuff popping up. they were doing a hard push to try to get into movies. And I think they eventually just kind of gave up on that.
Yeah, it ran its course.
Yeah, I think it did. They didn't have enough to really kind of keep moving with it. I don't think.
Well, then you had like Robot Chicken that came along and started to steal some of that thunder.
Right.
No.
So I'm guessing we've kind of answered some of this because I'm guessing if it's the likeness of the character in regards to a movie property, then you would likely have to go to the studio, right? And try to get the rights from there. Or whoever owned that, be it like Warner Brothers for whatever, right? Warner Brothers, Universal Studios, MGM, whoever happens to own those at that given time. If it's a role, I would assume it would be a role between that development studio and the actor themselves. And that should cover it in that case. I wonder if the third case can be made for using just the likeness that's done directly, like when Nintendo did Mike Tyson, right?
Right.
When they did Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Because in that case, it wasn't really a role. Mike Tyson wasn't an actor. They just wanted to associate him with. They just wanted to associate his likeness with the game. So that would have been between him and Nintendo.
Well, and you wonder
Austin
too.
Powers games, really?
I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
Well, you also wonder too if there are any contracts that were for multiple games or multiple series that may not have finished yet. One that comes to mind, or we can use these character. We can use your character in perpetuity. One of which Chris Roberts doesn't do anymore because he's stuck on Star Citizen, is Wing Commander. Now, at the very beginning of Wing Commander, it was all, cartoon drawn and so there were no celebrities. But when they went to Wing Commander 3, which was Heart of the Tiger, is when they started to use Mark Hamill and Malcolm McDowell and John Rhys Davies. So, and they went on to do, I think Malcolm McDowell went on to do 2 or 3 more. Mark Hamill did 2 or 3 more. I think John Rhys Davies only did the one. And so, if they ever brought out another Wing Commander, could they, so that's the other thing is what contracts do some of these folks have where you can always use them. Can you always use them? Can you always use Mark Hamill as the Joker in a Batman Arkham game?
I don't think so. I think,
and I know they
remastered. You'd have to
remastered.
go back and it depends. It depends if you're going to need him to do new lines, right?
Sure.
If
Well,
you
that's
need him
different.
to do new lines, which if you're going to do a new game and you're going to use the Joker, which technically they killed him off, you would have to work up a voice acting contract with him.
Yes.
Right.
But if you wanted to remaster Arkham Asylum, I think I just wonder if so we talked about remastering games going forward.
I would think if they were smart, they did that as an in perpetuity, right? So they should be able to take those lines again, unless they needed those remastered somehow, like if they needed them reread, and then you'd have to go back to him again and try to get him to redo the lines again. Which I would hope that they wouldn't have to do that because the lines as they stand would have been him in that time period, and that would be better to have, right, than having them redone. Because your voice.
Oh, your mic went out again.
Especially in Mark Hamill's case, he's given everything that went down. I would imagine he's in a slightly fragile state.
Um, I don't know, Peter. You play a ton of games.
Yeah.
Other ones that you have, that stick out at you as ones that have celebrities that, like I said, that stick out.
Uh, I think the big one, I think right now is maybe Cyberpunk,
Right.
Indiana Jones. Those are the ones that stick out to me. The rest, I don't know. I
Well,
mean, talking about the newer games, right?
it could be any game you've
It
played.
didn't have to be new. I mean, it could be something
Yeah.
older too. Even something that came up in contention of like whether or not you can still do anything with this or not, right? Like the Plants vs Zombies was one example where they were using kind of Michael Jackson's likeness a little bit in the game, and he didn't care, but his estate sure did.
So then it comes to the bigger question: is it necessary? I mean,
And
does
that's kind of where I wanted to go with it. Like, how much of this affects like whether or not you would buy the game, right? Like, okay, say in the United States, to go back to Punch Out again to beat this dead horse a little bit, had it just released as Punch Out and not Mike Tyson's Punch Out, once word of mouth got around on how fun the gameplay was, I would argue it probably would have sold just as well. I think it got a momentary boost because it had Mike Tyson's name attached to it.
well, so okay, so there's that now. Now that's a different and more interesting question. I like this question because the way so Mike Tyson was used to bring mainstream people into video gaming, right? I'm not so sure. I think that Punch Out would have sold adequately to the Nintendo base because it was basically a port of an arcade game that was really, really good. But I think having um, Mike Tyson's name on it gave that game recognition beyond gamers. And I, I, if you extrapolate that out a little bit farther, that was Sega's entire original strategy, right? Joe Montana, Tommy Lasorda, Michael Jackson, Buster Douglas were all put, like Tommy Lasorda wasn't even in Tommy Lasorda baseball, but his face was on the front of it. Buster Douglas was in Buster Douglas boxing. Michael Jackson was in Moonwalker. What was it? The Pat Riley basketball. Like
Yeah, I
those
think that
were
was in. I think well, and that kind of ties into your point a little bit, but I think that was them trying to be seen as the more adult console too, because most of the
yeah,
ones you're talking about go around to like the 16-bit era, right? Where Genesis was making, where Sega was making a really big push on the Master System, and I'm sorry, the Mega Drive, and slash Genesis as far as sports content and more teen and above content to try to
right.
change that age group, right?
Agreed. But to do that, I mean, they could have just put out, Sega World Series baseball from the beginning, right? Because that was what it turned into, was World Series baseball. That's right, David Robinson's basketball. What's up,
Basketball is
Zombie?
another one.
And on the Master System was Reggie Jackson baseball. They were using those names and those likenesses to bring in people that might not have given the Genesis a look, because it's just another video game system with a generic baseball game X. Putting
Right.
Tommy Lasorda, who was at the time one of the top managers, and they've been doing that for and so to that
And
point,
Tommy Lasorda is kind of another one because he had a lot of involvement in the game, kind of like Madden did.
yes.
So he
So
didn't
I'll
just
go
tie
back a
his name
little.
to it. This wasn't like what's his name from uh, the San Francisco.
Montana.
Yeah, Joe Montana.
No,
Like Joe
right.
Montana just put his name on the game.
Yeah.
He wasn't really super involved in
I'll
the process,
go.
whereas Tommy Lasorda and John Madden were.
Well, and
Right?
I'll
They
take it a
wanted heavy
step.
involvement in how the game was built.
I'll take that back a step because before that was Earl Weaver baseball on the PC. And Earl Weaver was not only
And
was
he
he
was
very
really
heavy
big
in it,
on it too. Yeah, I remember this now.
in fact, he was in the game and he would actually be the guy that came out and argue with the umpire.
There you go.
Like but the whole idea was to give the game some creep because Accolade had games like Hardball, and those were cool, but nobody really thought anything of it. Earl Weaver, who was a world renowned World Series championship manager, those were what drew in the people that didn't normally want to play a video game because they wanted to be, oh great, I could be Earl Weaver, or I could see Earl Weaver, or Earl Weaver could manage my team.
Right. And Nick makes another good point here. Genesis era, Sega placed a huge emphasis on celebrity licenses and endorsements. They weren't afraid to do something that gave them a one-up on Nintendo, but they primarily did this when it came to sports titles. That's where you had your Bristol Douglas boxing. That's when Madden football became almost synonymous with Genesis, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think you might have had maybe one title on the Super Nintendo, but for the most part, like Madden.
Oh no, Madden once it started on Super Nintendo stayed through it. It was yearly there too.
You had NFL, NHL, NBA
Arnold Palmer
licenses,
golf.
like license game and NCAA and PGA and all those that Genesis wanted. They wanted like the official license and the official seal on the game to give them that authority, and so they could use the actual rosters, right? Because you had sports games before that, but most of them would just have like whatever name
RBI
they
baseball.
wanted to put in there, right? It wasn't specific players or specific lineups or specific statistics and stuff like that. These games were supposed to feel more realistic because all the stats were more closely aligned with however that player was doing that year and what team they were playing for, because they might not be on the same team next year.
Art and Senna, Super Monaco GP. Yep.
Tecmo and RBI Baseball had real rosters. Did they though? I didn't think Tecmo Bowl actually had any of the actual NFL license.
Yes, because it had Bo Jackson.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected then. All right.
Bo Jackson was is always in a kind of an inside joke to, real teams and real players from the 1990-1991 NFL season.
Okay. I stand corrected then.
You wouldn't think it, but yeah, and it's even got the NFL logo in the middle of the screen. Bleak Block says New Adventures of Mary Kate and Ashley.
Yeah, I saw that.
JoJo
Super Monaco GP is another one. Yeah, where they threw the name on there.
Nolan Ryan. Oh yeah. I had was it Nolan Ryan? There was another one. Oh man. I had a baseball game. Oh, there was like Roger Clement. I mean, once you got started in that, then you started to get everybody. But there's another one. What was his name? Oh my goodness. I can picture the front of it, but I can't remember the pitcher's name. It's gonna bother me now. Started with an E.
Oh, somebody here, like he's just in here with all of them. Wayne Gretzky hockey.
Yep, Bo Jackson. Yeah, that's right. Bo Jackson had a baseball game.
Well, yeah, Bo played almost everything for a while.
Yep. Well, Bo was a dual sport. Bo and Deion Sanders were dual sport guys. Ken Griffey Jr. But man, there's what is his name? See, all right, baseball, video games.
What about Evercade? I'm a little lost, Big Block. Back. What do you mean Evercade?
Dr. J and Larry Bird, which then became Jordan versus Bird, right? Dr. J was on C64 and Atari.
Yeah.
Did you ever play that one?
Yeah, I
Hey,
did.
Absolute. How's it going? I'm not sure what you mean by this comment. I'm a little lost on that one. Sorry. Somebody may have to fill that one in.
Eckersley?
'Cause it
No,
might be the name of
not
an
Dennis.
actual player.
I know what he's saying. He's saying Dennis Eckersley. It's not Dennis Eckersley.
Okay.
Hang on. Oh my goodness. He's a pitcher.
Okay, I was about to say, when you guys start talking, go too deep into sports, like I know surface level and some history on it, but like detailed players and stuff, I'm like, pfft.
I'm gonna find it. It was a computer game. It was on PC. Son of a Frank Thomas had a.
Okay. Back's like, it started with an E. Started him coming in mid conversation. Got it. Okay, that makes more sense.
Mike Piazza, not Piazza.
I'm gonna start playing Jeopardy music in here for a little bit.
Talks amongst yourself for a second, because it's gonna bother me until I find this. Eckersley was a great guess, though. Absolute.
Trying to get Mike to lose it. It's not working yet.
Now,
I feel
I'm
like
gonna wake
Peter would
up
be
in
better at it than me because he just kind
I'm
of
gonna
comes
wake-
out of nowhere on you.
yes, he comes out of nowhere with Mike. Change your gun.
Yeah. When in doubt, change your gun.
JD8 says, hi, by the way. Sometimes games try to capitalize on the breakout stars Tony Hawk, Tiger Woods. I'm not old enough to know some of the people you guys are mentioning. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair, man. Zombie says Earl Weaver.
No, Earl Weaver was a manager. We talked about Earl Weaver baseball.
Okay.
He was a pitcher. I want to say it was either a
Pete
PC
Rose
game
had
or an
one
Xbox.
too.
Or not even an E. I'm such an idiot. I'm an idiot.
I
Holy
mean, I wasn't going to say anything.
bro. Oral Hershiser.
That Peter, does that mean anything to you?
Oral
No.
Hershiser.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not the only one here. The zombie's
now
just
I'm-
throwing out names because they probably got a game associated with him now. Carl Ripken.
Ripken had a game. Yep.
Yes, he did.
Cal
Now, all
Ripken
these people
baseball.
had games, but what's funny is you could just throw a dart at a dartboard of like a popular name from like the 90s, and it was a sports athlete. They probably
Oral
had a game.
Hershiser Strike Zone. That's what it was called. 1989 Oral Hershiser Strike Zone. It was out on PC.
Oh. I think that one was actually kind of memorable because wasn't that closer to actual like baseball? One of the first ones to feel more like baseball.
Yep.
Okay.
I remember and I loved the game because
And
it was
somehow
also
this became like a sports game stream when we were talking
no, because I mean, we started to talk about Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson, that becomes
You tell him, Big Block. So how do you spell Oral Hershiser starting with an E again?
it's got E in the name. Shut up. I'm trying to.
I feel like Big Black just shows up to streams you're in just to ruin your day.
Yeah, he does a good job. Yeah.
He's not wrong. The E is silent, shit says. Oh my god, you guys are killing me. But I guess the point is while those brought a lot of, those did bring attention to Genesis as a whole, do you feel like it augmented the sales of those in particular, or just brought, having those names associated with anything on the console brought more eyes to the console itself for people to actually start looking at the library? To kind of rein this back into kind of where you were going with the thought process earlier.
No, I think that I honestly think that they did that to bring in outside interests from the normal gaming section. Because because like we were just talking about, baseball games before that were just called, hey, FP, were just called RBI
I hate your
baseball.
son if you name him Oral.
Technically, well, hold on. Technically, his name is Orel, so it is Orel, not Oral. Orel, like
I guarantee
Jor-El.
you everybody called it Oral.
Well, yeah, Oral. So again, the games, even the ones that had real players, were still named RBI Baseball, World Series Baseball, Tecmo Baseball, Baseball Simulator, right? Baseball Stars. It wasn't until you got into Tony La Russa, Ken Griffey Jr., when you started to get those, even nowadays, like MLB The Show isn't called MLB The Show with whoever. It's just got the guy on the front cover to sell it. And that's really what it was. It was, do you want to play RBI baseball or do you want to play Tony La Russa baseball, right? Tony La Russa being obviously, again, at the time, 1993 or 1992, I think when the first one came out, he was one of the top names in baseball. And when you played that game, it looked and played like a real baseball game. That was the point. To where,
right, but at that same time, though, you were starting to get more and more games that were popping up that played and felt like real baseball. They just didn't have those names associated with them, right?
well,
Especially if you're talking Genesis era, right?
Well, and Tommy Lasorda was PC. It might have had a Genesis port, but Tony La Russa was PC. I had that game on the PC.
Yeah. But I mean, if we were to like focus in on like say 16-bit consoles, and you would say focus in on the Genesis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you got your NCAA football, right? Which is NCAA, so that's kind of like having a name recognition a little bit, but you don't have like Madden or what's his name? Joe Montana on it, right?
Right.
Those seemed like a lot of people that were into sports were as much, if not more, into those in a lot of cases than they were the Joe Montana versions or the Madden versions. I mean, you had loyalists that just played, and you still do, that just play Madden every year. Mm-hmm. It's whatever the new Madden is, and that's why they buy the new consoles, because it's Madden. I'm going to play Madden. It's the same way with like Call of Duty, right? Whatever the new Call of Duty game is, that's what they're buying. And that may be all they play for like the next year until the next revision of that particular game comes out, right?
Right.
But at this point, it's gone past like Madden or 2K, whatever, to like the brand itself. Like 2K Sports now is pretty much like the game, right? So people are going to buy whatever that 2K Sports game is regardless.
Right.
Of
like MLB The Show. Right. Like MLB The Show. You're right. Not buying that for... You're not buying that for... You're really at that point not buying it for the person on the
right.
cover.
I mean, in that case, do you think having Keanu Reeves help sell more Cyberpunk 2077 copies? Me personally, I would argue no, I feel
No.
like CD
Well, I would
Projekt
argue
Red
that a
did
lot
that
of
on their
these.
own with their reputation.
I would argue that a lot of these games nowadays, I don't know that it. I don't know how much it sells. Did people buy? Did people buy Death Stranding because Norman Reedus and Mads Mikkelsen was in it, or did they buy it because it's a Hideo Kojima game?
Yeah, my game, pretty sure.
I mean, I would say they bought it because it was a Hideo Kojima game.
Right.
The others being in there wasn't because anybody else wanted them in there. It was because Hideo Kojima wanted them in there.
Right. And they were happy to do so. Some of these celebrities do these not to get paid, but because it's, and Keanu Reeves said this. He wasn't, obviously they paid him, right? He's not doing it for free. But that wasn't his main motivation. He was like, he said it was just so cool to be in a different medium and to see what they could do with a caricature of him in a fantasy world rather than him having to be an actor playing something right in a movie. He's like, they had a freedom with my likeness, with my character that I might not have even had playing in a movie, right? Even with all the special effects and things like that. So
Right.
for some of these guys, it's about the joy of it. I mean, Norman Reedus was apparently like a big friend of Kojima and loved his work and kind of wanted to do it, jumped at the chance to do it. Because it just gave him something else. I don't know that he got paid a ton for it.
I mean, what about, say, Kevin Spacey? Because I don't think Kevin Spacey could give two flips about video games.
Probably not. And I think those smaller characters.
And I don't think Kevin Spacey sold a single copy of Call of Duty for them. They made a big deal of it with him being in there.
Yeah, no.
Like, they put it in all the ads and stuff like that, and he did a couple commercials and stuff for him, but I don't think anybody who actually played Call of Duty could have cared less if he was in there or not. Somebody's just coming up with games for Oral Horsehider to be in. Oral Horsehider, Call of Duty, or Keanu Reeves is Oral Horsehider in Cyber Batter.
That's all right. You missed big blocks.
Not buying MLB the Show for Oral Horsehider, that's for sure.
See, I'm glad I could provide all of you folks this prime entertainment.
Spacey was big into the young men crowd. Yeah, he was.
Oh, what's up, JDA? Oh my goodness. Now,
I mean, like, Megan Fox didn't sell any copies of Mortal Kombat 1.
No. And I don't, no, and I mean, if you look, there are a couple of games where maybe you could say that. Like, I remember, Peter, remember the game 12 Minutes?
Yeah.
For a brief 12 minutes. I played that game like 3 times. I'm like, all right. That was James McAvoy and Willem Dafoe was in that. And then that was neat how they brought that together. Obviously Terry Crews. Remember Terry Crews, Peter, and Crackdown 3?
Mm-hmm.
Showed, I think you're right.
But I don't think, yeah.
She did.
I want to say it was something like Barbed Wire.
I'm sorry, you were saying, Peter.
VIP, that was it.
Yeah, even though, in Crackdown it was Terry Crews, it's...
Well, yeah, he was in...
Could have been, I don't know, could have been anybody,
Crackdown,
really.
But I don't... I mean, I saw him in there, and I'm like, that's cool that he wants to be in a video game, but that's not what's drawing me to Crackdown 3. I was drawn to Crackdown 3 because it was Crackdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
I ended up
Right.
being a little bit bored with it. I thought it was a little too one note of a game, particularly after all the build up. But I still bought it because it was Crackdown, not because of
Right.
Terry Crews.
I mean, would you have played Advanced Warfare if Kevin? That's a good question. Would you have? Would it have made a difference if someone else other than Kevin Spacey was um, Jonathan Irons?
I don't think
In
so.
fact,
I don't think, dude, for the Call of Duty crowd, I don't think it would. I
well,
mean,
and in
maybe there was
fact,
like that one really big Kevin Spacey fan that bought it because Kevin Spacey was in it, but I just can't. I can't fathom.
well, didn't
Not
they?
at this point, like the gaming culture focusing in on a Hollywood celebrity.
Yeah, but didn't they also? I mean, they also wiped him out of the game. They replace him with Tom Hanks or some shit.
Kevin Spacey? I don't think so. He was in the
I
release. Did they go back and rewrite that?
I
Kind of
think they
like they were
pulled him
going to
out of
do
it.
with was it Conor McGregor and his domestic abuse thing? Because he was
Oh,
supposed to be in the next Hitman game, and so that
oh.
got delayed because they needed to rework it because he
Yeah,
got
I don't
under
think
those
they.
allegations
Yeah, I don't think they
that were
did.
going to court, so they were going to pull him out of the game.
No, and I don't think they did. I was just um
And that was kind of part of the point, right? When you're developing some of these
right.
games and some of these celebrities, you get it that you've already paid this money for, right? Because Connor already got his money. Are you gonna try to sue him to get your money back because he got into domestic abuse trouble? Because now you can't use his likeness, or does he just keep his money?
No, I don't know.
I would
And no,
imagine
they didn't. And right, I was kind of
you
joking.
asked
I was
for
kind
it,
of joking about pulling him out. If you even go to Call of Duty site, you go to Advanced Warfare, they still list him as Academy Award winning actor Kevin Spacey.
right?
Um, but those are the games that I think nowadays maybe there are some games that would be different without the character. Let's go back to Quantum Break for a second. Um, I don't know that Quantum Break would be the same game without Sean Ashmore in it as the main. Like Sean Ashmore, and now I'm looking it up because I can't remember the second guy. Um, it was Sean Ashmore. It was
Yeah. Um,
Aiden Gillian, Aiden Gillen, and Lance Reddick. Like the thing about that game was I think those characters looked more realistic to the actors than Indiana Jones did.
mhm.
Um, and so that I think that would not have been the same game without it. It would be like, and honestly, at this point, I think Sam Lake himself's a celebrity. I think if anybody else tried to do Max Payne, nobody would like it because it's not Sam Lake's likeness.
I think if you rebooted
Uh,
it and got, like, say, another voice actor and you didn't use and made up a new likeness that was just slightly different, I think it would probably still work. You know what I mean?
Well,
I think you could do that.
remember what other series tried that and failed?
Which
Splinter
series
Cell.
is that? I'm drawing a
Splinter
blank.
Cell with Michael Ironside as the main character. Michael Ironside was Sam Fisher, and when they tried to replace him with somebody else, the game didn't sell for anything. That's one where people revolted because Michael Ironside's voice wasn't in the game, to the point to where he came back in the next game. So I do remember that there are those, and it was who was the president in that game was. Give me a second.
Yeah, but to catch up on a couple comments here, Zombie says there's a big difference when someone just gives the right to use their likeness versus when they're actually involved in the gameplay and the design.
Sure.
Like using Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk versus Madden, who actually came up with a lot of the plays.
what about Max Payne 3? That wasn't the same as the first.
No, it wasn't. And
People are like, I would buy Mortal Kombat if they added the Carrot Top DLC.
But didn't that game even wasn't that game even was that game even done by no, it was developed by Rockstar. It wasn't even developed by Remedy.
Kojima's son, Guillermo del Toro's storytelling and imagery with Norman Reedus as the main character was one of the biggest letdowns. Yeah, you're talking about PT that never really went anywhere.
Right?
But I mean, the reason like Del Toro was because that's back when Del Toro was like he had just been knocking everything out of the park. So and he's well known for both sci-fi, fantasy, and horror. So everybody wanted to see what he could do with Kojima in a game because with Kojima's the weird design brain and Del Toro's artistic flair for making character designs, you could have come up with something like really, really crazy. What's up, Panda Face? Good to see you.
Hey, girl. What's up, Havocs?
But this combination of Kojima and Del Toro isn't so much like a celebrity thing, more as people knowing the quality of the work that they produce and the worlds that they build and being curious what they could do together, right? That's not so much like an actor, though they are celebrities in and of their own right in their fields, right? One as a director and, well, I guess both as directors, technically. Only one for movies and one for video games. And Kojima has really been looking to get into movies for a while now. That seems to be like half of his games now are like cinematic cutscenes and stuff. He really wants to be making movies. Not necessarily video games. Carla!
Carla! What's up, Carla? Wow, we're insane emotes.
I know, now we're starting to get all kinds of people in tonight.
Yeah. We got 5 over on YouTube and we've got 20 on Rumble.
But I think at this point you've gotten people who become kind of celebrities in the field themselves, right? When you mention Ed Boon, everybody knows who Ed Boon is. Everybody knows who Cliff Blinsky is from like Gears of War and all that. You know, everybody knows. Oh God, drawing blanks, Neil. On people that I know, lead designers of like Doom. Everybody knows them. You know what I mean? You say id and people know id. You say Blizzard and people know Blizzard, right? Whether it's old school Blizzard and new school Blizzard. And there's names within those realms like Gabe Newell and stuff like that. They've kind of become celebrities in and of themselves in the field. So when you talk about them, they're almost more of a draw than the Hollywood celebrities and likenesses that are being pulled into the games themselves. Because people are looking either by title recognition, like in the case of like say 2K whatever or Madden, etc., or Call of Duty, or they're looking at specific like directors and stuff for specific titles or specific titles themselves, right? More so than they're looking for the celebrity tie-ins that come into them. I feel like as those became more predominant and people started spending more money on those on the budget, is kind of where some of the games started to go downhill a little bit because you're spending all this extra money to get celebrities into the video games, right? Hollywood celebrities, trying to tie them into this ecosystem of video games more and more, when that the gamers just want what they're making already, right? Because Call of Duty wasn't getting people like Kevin Spacey until Call of Duty started to get big, right? CD Projekt Red didn't start out getting people like Keanu Reeves into their game. CD Projekt Red made a reputation for themselves and then approached Keanu. Now, whether or not he would have done it before is another story. You know, it'd be like approaching Henry Cavill. You approach Henry Cavill to put him in a video game, and he's probably going to say yes if he likes what you're doing, right? He's not, because he's a video game. He likes video games. He likes tabletop games. So he wants to be involved in those things. He actively kind of seeks them out. But a lot of these other actors that aren't necessarily in there, you weren't really getting them into these IPs until they started to get better name recognition and could do something for them. And I don't know that it really does the gamers or the game a service to necessarily have people like that in there that aren't necessarily into those things themselves, right? If you're bringing a celebrity who happens to be a gamer in, that's kind of a different thing. One, they're probably not going to charge you as much. Two, they're going to be more invested in whatever product they're in, right? It's like bringing Megan Fox into Mortal Kombat 1. It's some of her worst voiceover work I've ever seen her do in my life. I mean, it's passable, but it's kind of bad. It was like having Ronda Rousey as Sonya in MK11. It was fucking awful, right? It was just bad. They're not invested in what they're doing, and so they're not going to put a good performance forward. So they're doing the company a disservice, which are paying a lot of money to have them in there, and they're doing the gamers a disservice because they have to hear it all the time, right? Because every time those characters come up, you have to hear those voice lines again and again and again and again. And when they're bad, it gets annoying, right? That's more my point with a lot of these things. That sometimes it can kind of hurt things a little bit. Like you could have saved the money on Megan Fox and put it towards something else. Because nobody really necessarily needed her likeness in the game. Nobody necessarily wanted her voice acting in the game. Do I mind that it's in there personally? No. But do I think it would have been fine without it? Probably. Would have stopped me from buying the game? Absolutely not.
Right.
And now I've run off like 4 or 5 of the viewers that we had on YouTube. How dare you talk bad about Megan Fox?
She was great in Transformers.
Yes, it was her acting ability you were looking at. Honestly, I've seen her play some roles where I thought she was actually pretty okay. She's not bad in everything she's done. There were times where I actually kind of enjoyed her presence on screen. Thought she did a pretty good job.
She was in other movies?
Do what?
She was in other movies?
Yes.
Okay. She was.
She was in the Transformers movies. She was in the Turtle movies. She did one called
Turtle
Jennifer's
movies.
Body.
She was in the.
She did one recently called Subservience, where she played like a robot android character, which was actually a pretty solid role for her. And I think she's been in some other stuff too, but that's just what I can remember off the top of my head. She was also in Jonah Hex.
Was she in Jonah Hex?
Yeah.
Hmm.
She was also in one of the Expendables films. She was kind of terrible in that, but she was there. So she's been in a number of things.
Okay.
What are the benefits of putting someone like Megan Fox as a voice actor in a game? Not much. Or someone who does voice acting for a living? Zero. And that's part of the problem that I have when you have people come in and you license part of their look and their voice for a game over a actual voice actor.
Yeah. And the thing is, Megan Fox does not. Oh, Jennifer's Body was one that I think she was good in. Megan Fox's voice is not that distinguishable from other people's voices.
Right. You're not talking like Cat Williams or
right.
You know.
Exactly. You're not talking about, somebody who you absolutely like a Christopher Walken. You know Christopher Walken's voice when you hear it in a video game, right?
Keanu Reeves, you know his voice when you hear it in a video game. He's got a really distinct voice.
Yes.
Michael Ironside is another one.
Absolutely. I think there was wasn't it Army Men that had Lee Ermery in it? And you could tell. I'm like, holy crap, that's Sergeant Hartman.
Yeah. Tommy Lee Jones and Small Soldiers.
Lee Jones. I think so. Stallone's done a couple of things where, Megan Fox, you could say you could have her name not in the credits and wouldn't know that was Megan Fox.
Right. It was like Ronda Rousey in Mortal Kombat 11. Okay, so she's an MMA star and you wanted her there, so maybe you could mocap some stuff that she does. All right, you've never needed that before. I don't feel like you need that now. She's not a voice actor. She doesn't have a great distinctive voice, and she's not a very experienced actor anyway. So why are you paying the money? Other than, like Big Block says, you want to have Megan Fox come into your office when you're making the video game. You want to have Ronda Rousey around
It's
the
mocap.
office while you're making your video game.
And you just want to mocap her chest.
Yeah.
That's all.
Like,
No.
Mike doesn't get the benefit. Like, not even her look is very distinguishable. Hot brunette at the end. Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah, she's not. There's nothing special about her. I mean, honestly.
Well, when it comes to like acting ability and distinctive voice, not necessarily. If you're going for like that specific look, sure. But they modified her look so much to make her kind of look like Natara for the video game. I mean, if you had wanted to have like her as a guest character, like say you wanted her to come in as herself for the character from Jennifer's Body, right? Okay, that makes sense. You're bringing her in as like a horror character, right? You're using that likeness to get that character from that movie in the game, just like you licensed Arnold Schwarzenegger's look and voice for Mortal Kombat 11 and Stallone's voice and his younger self for Rambo in 11, right? You're getting those people in to be able to use that likeness and getting their voice in to portray those characters that they've already portrayed before. Right?
And a name I mentioned earlier, Keith David. Keith David's voice.
Well, and Tiny Painted Face has another one, like Jennifer Tilly. You're gonna notice Jennifer Tilly, whether you can put the name to it or not.
Right.
You're gonna notice that voice.
Right. Mark Hamill. Well, I think you could tell Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
Peter Cullen, obviously, every time he's in a Transformers movie,
Right.
you know that's Peter Cullen or a Transformers game. He's not an actor, but Steve Downs, he's Master Chief.
Right.
That's an indistinguishable voice.
So I feel like that's kind of where some of this goes. Like, yeah, Eddie Murphy would be another one. Yeah, but there in a lot of cases though, I feel
would
like
you though, unless he did his laugh?
Benefit. Like, okay, so you brought in a Mega Man, yeah, from Invincible, right? No, Omni-Man. I'm sorry. From Invincible, and you got J.K. Simmons to do the voice again for the game. That's iconic.
You would
kind
know.
of voice.
Yeah.
They almost ended up, and I think they did in some cases, charge you for the damn voice lines, which I found particularly insulting because they were charging you extra for the voice lines after you bought the character.
Hey.
And I'm like, now,
but you're right.
Getting a little too. This is going too far. You want to use the likeness. You want to put the character in the game. It's not my responsibility to pay for the voice lines for the actor that you wanted to put in there.
But you are right. He has a distinctive voice.
He does. You may not put his face to it every time, but when you hear J.K. Simmons' voice, you go, oh yeah,
that's J.K. Simmons.
You might go, hey, that's J. Jonah Jameson from Spider-Man, or the dude from the Allstate ads, or
you go back as far as I do, the guy from the HBO show Oz.
Yeah, or Cave Johnson from the Portal games, because he did that voice too. You might place him from something else and not get his name right off the bat, but you know that voice. Right?
Yeah.
And if that's what you want that character to sound like, that brings something to the party. Otherwise, it's just spending money to spend money. Or, like Big Block said, to have them walking around the office, hot brunette, walking around the office, there you go.
Right.
There's your reason to pay her $10, $20 million or whatever she asked for to get her come in. Right? And spend some time bumming around the office doing some lines, or just to get to meet her because you have the money and that's what you want to do. Not that it's the most fiscally responsible thing, and not that your player base really gives a crap. In some cases, yes. In a lot of cases, And a lot of these where they've had celebrities come in and do their voices, I felt like the role
Kevin Conroy's another one.
done had you just brought in an actual voice actor.
Yeah. But like Kevin Conroy would be another one, although Kevin is no longer with us. But
Yeah.
Kevin Conroy was the voice of Batman, and
Yes.
and he was even Batman in some of the video games, and you could tell.
Yes.
Did he do? He did Batman in the Arkham games, right?
I believe he did, yes. But I think we've kind of gone through this topic a little bit. Can you maybe think about anything else that we want to kind of talk about?
I'm good, Peter.
Yeah, I'm good too.
Okay. I'm going to try to get us out here a little early. I have to start waking up at like 5 a.m. now because of work. So.
Oh, that sucks.
I'm going to try to like spend a little bit of time with my wife and then pass out and get up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, I keep forgetting you're 2 hours behind me.
Yep.
I'm
2 hours
like,
behind
holy
you.
crap. It's 12:22. You need to get some sleep. But I'm like, no, it's 10:22.
Yeah. Yes.
No, it is. If it was 12:22 my time, I would have already been screwed.
Yeah. No, this is, it's good. We can. I think we did. I think we covered. I mean, we covered a lot of celebrities.
We did almost close to 2 hours on this, and I did not think we would get this far with this particular topic.
Yeah. Big Block says he could tell it was Patton Oswalt. Yeah, Patton Oswalt's got a distinct voice.
Yeah, he does. And so does Seth Rogen, much to the pain of my ears now.
Yes, to everybody.
I've been hearing him so much for so many years that when he
Michael
starts
Dunk-
doing
Michael
voiceover
Clark
work
Duncan
or anything, I'm just
has
like,
done-
oh no, I have to hear you again.
Yeah, Michael Clark Duncan has done some. So, all right, we've done good here.
All right. So, what you guys got going on this week?
All right. So tomorrow, we're going to take to the air, check out Microsoft Flight Simulator in our, I guess, patented multi-screen, dual screen show. Really, we'll probably take a few minutes to talk about Indiana Jones because I did see Peter.
Yes.
You have started it, so we'll get our thoughts on that, and then we'll play some Microsoft Flight Simulator, and then we'll figure out what Peter's got going on Wednesday. Thursday is Thursday night at the arcade, whatever Antstream stuff is going on, and then Friday night.
Thanks for coming by, Nick. We do this like every other week.
Yeah.
For the most part. And
awesome.
Other than this, I do like game history all the time on the channel. So check some of that out. If you dig it, hey, keep coming by, man. I always appreciate meeting new people.
Dude, Nick's videos are top notch. That's all I'm gonna say.
Sorry to interrupt. We had somebody leave a comment, so I wanted to cover that.
Hit that subscribe button. If you're over on Rumble, hit that follow button. Hit the thumbs up on both. And then Friday night we'll play more Call of Duty. We had
10 versus 10. I mean,
we had 10. I can't. That was an insane night. And then I'll be back on Sunday for more Indiana Jones. That'll be my Sunday night stream for the foreseeable future.
nice.
And then next Monday is Monday Night Retro, and I have a new adapter for my X arcade stick. I can now use it on my Sega Saturn, and we are going to do. Oh yeah, I was very happy. So we're going to be doing some Sega Saturn next week.
That'll be cool.
I love you too, Big Block.
Peter, do you have anything going on that's not tied to like what Mike's doing that you kind of want to talk about a little bit?
Yeah, I think Wednesday I'm going to do a Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League.
That's right.
I
You
picked
got
it
that
up
on
for
cheap,
$5. So
you?
$4 for how much it was. It's a bargain. And they announced that they make it so you can play it offline.
Yeah, they were gonna set up an offline mode because they've got like one more season. I think
One more
they're doing,
season,
and then
yeah. Final season.
They're
is coming.
sunsetting it, right?
Yep. The service will stay up for quite some time, but then they will also add it so you can solo it offline. So that's all good. I mean, for $5, I can get some fun out of that.
Yeah, you're probably gonna get more fun out of that for your $5 than I did Duke Nukem Forever. I spent like $5 or $6 for that, and I wanted my money back. That was a terrible game. Oh my god, it's so bad. I thought for $5 I could kind of push myself through it and find some fun out of it, and no, I kind of wanted my money back.
See, that's one advantage. If you get like physical media, at least you have a disc, you know, that might look good on the outside. The game might suck, but
yeah,
at least you have something to show for. Whereas
Yeah.
digital is like, yeah, delete, gone.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I didn't unassociate it with my account. It's still there.
It's still
I have
there.
done that with some titles before. I'm like, nope, nope, nope. I don't even claim you anymore.
I claim anything I can get my hands on. Amazon
Yeah.
Prime, Epic
Dude, he
Game
does.
Store. Wow, huge catalog. I still have to play
He
their
plays the
first game.
stuff I won't touch, but he'll be like, I beat it, and he beats him. That's just it. He plays all the way through too.
Yeah,
It has
some
to
of 'em
be
I just
really
can't do
bad.
it.
It has
I
to
don't
be
know.
like pulling my teeth and other stuff. Stalker 2, I'm about to that point. I'm like stuck again. I know, like,
Yeah, you said Mike said you were like kind of really annoyed with that one.
yeah, at the beginning I was super annoyed. I almost put it away, and then finally, you know, you get some better guns with some scopes. That helps a little bit.
Yeah,
And obviously they fixed the game, so it's not pretty iffy. You know, you fire a shot and then all of a sudden, like, you know, your cursor moves like
oh god,
like a few feet. It's like, so you miss. It's like very frustrating. So they tightened up a bunch of stuff. So I had a lot of fun, but now I'm stuck in an area, and it's really pissing me off. So I don't know if it's.
yeah. The only
I might
thing
just
I've
shelve
I've
it.
got my videos uploaded through the end of the month. I've gotten a lot of the editing done on 2 more, so I should have those uploaded probably in the next week or so. And that'll cover me on standard videos all the way through like mid-January. I've got some scripts written up for some ones on the Atari. I think it's XEG or XES. I'm not remembering the acronym. It's like a really obscure Atari console that came out after the 7800. And then one on the Nintendo Hotline that I've been trying
It's
to
the
work up.
XEGS is what that
XEGS,
was.
that's it.
Well, it was a okay. It wasn't obscure. It's just it was a weirdly named. So it was actually after the XL series computers, the 1200, which I had, and then the 800, which they redesigned because the 1200 flopped. Then they came out with the Atari XE, and that was it was kind of like a bridge between their consoles and their home computers.
Yeah.
And
They wanted to make basically a computer that looked and worked like a home console. That's
exactly.
where the
And that was
Genesis
the
came
XE
from.
system.
Yeah.
And so it started with the 65 XE, and then they redesigned it and they called it the XEGS.
Yeah.
So
and then they had a 128 version of it, I think, as well.
yep. They only had a handful of games for it.
Yeah, there wasn't like a ton of games for it, but I
No.
thought it was one of the ones I hadn't really heard of.
However-
I hadn't really dug into, so I did some digging on that.
However, while there were only a handful of games for that, it was totally backward compatible with every Atari 8-bit computer game ever created. So
Correct.
the library
However,
was
it
vast.
didn't do so with console games. It was backwards compatible
Right.
with their 8-bit
Right. The
computer
cartridges,
line.
correct. Which did have games on cartridges.
Oh no,
I
there
used
was
to
a
have.
lot of games for the 8-bit computers.
I
and,
loved
and
mine.
some of them were on
Like,
cartridges and tapes and other medium as well.
dude, when you get more, I'll tell you what. When you get more versed in the Atari computer line, that needs to be one of our Retro Roots episodes because that's
I'll
what I
probably
grew
start
up on.
covering like PC computers at some point because I'm going to run out of physical consoles to cover, so PCs will be the next logical step.
Okay.
To kind of go into some of that. So yeah,
'Cause
that's one of them, and Nintendo Hotline's another one that I'm kind of working on. I don't know which one of those I'm gonna like work up first, but those are kind of coming. Lately, as far as gaming, I've been doing a lot of Tekken 8, a lot of Street Fighter 6. Started getting into Marvel Rivals. I like the normal quick play mode on that, where it's more team focused and you have an objective like capture this objective or move this payload. Lately, for leveling processes, I've been doing because I've been trying to open up ranked for something specific that some friends wanted to do. I've been forcing myself to do their team deathmatch mode, and I absolutely cannot recommend that unless you just want to be annoyed. Because it's got a mix of characters that because it's a hero shooter. You have dive characters which jump in and do a ton of damage. They're usually pretty squishy and can fall apart, right? Then you've got your tank characters that are just bullet sponges, and then you've got kind of your mid-range characters, which is DPS, which is kind of what I'll focus with on the DPS range, which is more of the standard kind of like run and gun kind of characters. And it's very hard to deal with a lot of the variances if you're not playing a tank or a healer in there with a lot of those diving characters on some of those character types that don't have the same mobility. So it can be kind of very frustrating from that aspect, at least for me. Mind you, it's not hard to be better than me at a hero shooter. So your mileage may vary and you may be significantly better at it. But anytime I try to play some of the diving characters, I die like crazy. But I get like one shot by them constantly in the game, like all day. And it gets really old really fast and very unfun very fast. So that's not a mode I particularly recommend, would be Team Deathmatch in that. I don't find that particular mode fun in those kinds of games. I prefer the more your team is trying to work together to accomplish something than everybody just scatters to the wind and does whatever. I don't particularly enjoy those particular modes in those games. So I'll probably be doing some of that. I don't know if I'm going to bother to stream it or not. I have thought about doing that with some of the fighters, just so I'll kind of commit more time to it in a session, rather than them burning out and walking away from it so quickly. And maybe if I can get past this one point on rivals and get back to the modes I enjoy more, I'll get there. But time is a constraint on this, which is why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. Not because I enjoy these modes or I'm trying to learn to enjoy them. I don't want to learn to enjoy this particular mode. It just gives me more experience faster, which is the only reason it's even on the docket. Otherwise, I don't want to touch it. And I'm kind of annoyed they tied rank to experience level. That kind of annoys me too. That's like the two small points on that game I don't like. The character classes are good. It feels a little bit like Overwatch. It feels pretty clean overall. It's got a good aesthetic to it, and it feels like a solid hero shooter. It's just one I'm not very good at right now, and so there's that part of the struggle. And playing a mode I've never really enjoyed in any of the games, period, like this. That's also a bit of a struggle. So there's that part. Anyway, that's kind of what I've got going on right now, and kind of what's coming up in the foreseeable future. So hopefully you guys will pop in and see some of those. If you do see me like streaming at all, that's going to be on Rumble. That will not be on YouTube. I tend to not stream on YouTube. I just don't particularly enjoy the streaming experience there, so I tend to not do it there. And I like to keep this particular channel focused on this podcast and the content that I make for this channel, which is all history focused. It would require an entirely new channel for me to start live streaming here, and I don't really want to put that kind of effort in on YouTube right now. I find my uploaded videos far more rewarding on this particular platform, so that's what I stick to on the YouTube side. Rumble may get some of that content, assuming anybody wants that content. That's a whole other thing. So anyway, that's what I've got going on. Other than that, thank you everybody for hanging out with us. We made it to the 2-hour mark. Go us. I blame Peter. You couldn't get him to not keep pulling the conversation back into certain different directions. It's all your fault, Peter.
Yeah, it always is.
No, honestly, man, it was good to have you here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Piped in on the topic.
Yeah,
you're always welcome on here. If you have a topic you want to cover, let me know, man. We're gonna cover it. And we'll drag you back in here again.
Sounds good.
All right. So thank you guys for hanging out. Have a great night, and we will see you guys next time. Happy gaming.
Play on, gamers.
Game on.